Surrogate endpoints are actually fairly common now in the US and other markets. And it's the result, if you will, of the FDA allowing, if not absolutely advocating for accelerated pathways, right? Sponsors, patients, the FDA all have an interest in bringing novel drugs to market, especially for conditions with a great deal of unmet need. So how do we do that more quickly? If we think about oncology, and oncology agents actually represent an overwhelming majority of accelerated pathway applications, they will tend to use surrogate endpoints. What does that mean? We might look at progression-free survival or different biomarkers around a tumor rather than overall survival, which is a more robust endpoint, but it takes longer to study. The industry was excited for Sarepta and their receipt of an approval from the FDA for their DMD gene therapy. This was approved, or at least the approval that we're expecting in 4 to 5-year-olds, on the basis of a surrogate endpoint really looking at dystrophin protein levels, and that really being representative, hopefully, of true, if not curative potential, but disease modification to reduce disability in those children. But if we think about surrogate endpoints, they're not necessarily just novel drugs in the past few years. We readily accept that we use statin therapy because we want to lower cholesterol levels. We know that HIV drugs reduce viral load and viral counts. So the idea of surrogate endpoints isn't entirely new, but I think they've really grown up a lot around these accelerated pathways. And then this past year, there's been, I think, a fair bit of news and a fair bit of debate because the FDA, as well as payers, are really asking now for confirmatory studies. We'll give you a limited approval based on the surrogate, but we still want more data. We want that confirmatory study. We absolutely are, and I think it's the result probably of a few trends. Not every sponsor has gone on to do their confirmatory study, and there's more pressure from regulators and payers to do that. So I think that really sends a message to pick your right endpoints, pick your study design, even if you're going to go down an accelerated path, to know that you're going to continue to a confirmatory study. So to be very, very deliberate about your evidence, about your design. And at the same time, with the number of accelerated approvals having really grown over the past few years, we've also seen an increasing number of withdrawals. Drugs that either have failed their confirmatory study, or perhaps they don't have the evidence to compete in a marketplace with another drug that may be more newly approved. So it's again always important to think about evidence, not just for regulators, but for payers. Do you have the patient-reported outcomes, the right primary endpoints, the right secondary endpoints that are going to satisfy payers? And we know this is emerging as a trend in the US with the Inflation Reduction Act, the importance of organizations like ICER, who are really looking at clinical and economic value. But this has been the norm in Europe for a long time. And indeed, we actually see more drugs with a surrogate endpoint staying on the market in Europe, so not being withdrawn. But this is also the result of a more rigorous process where fewer of them will actually get access. So a more deliberate planning process, I think, in summary, will allow you to meet your regulatory requirements, meet your payer requirements, and importantly, remain on the market. So I think what is in the news and a lot of people are really focused on are the initial 25 or 30 drugs that are really high sales in the US today, where there'll be direct price negotiations, and we've started to see the impact of rebates. But at the same time, behind the scenes, right, there are many, many pharmaceutical companies and biotechs that are working on their clinical development, thinking about their pipeline, and even for a single asset, thinking about how many indications they may wish to pursue. And this is where the IRA, I think, raises a lot of questions, but also perhaps there's a lot of work people can be doing today. If you do have the ability to pursue multiple indications, thinking about prevalence, is it a rare disease? Is it a chronic illness with a very high prevalence? What's the pricing differential? And more importantly, what's the value, the clinical value that will be linked to a potential price? And there's a lot of discussions going on around how to consider those portfolio decisions, which indications, which assets to prioritize. And then again, the importance of evidence and having the proper endpoints, the proper patient inputs, patient-reported outcomes in your studies to have the most robust package available that can really help you demonstrate value.